Hello, everybody. Welcome inside the Fantasy Hut for our third fantasy football podcast of the season. I'm the league commissioner, David Chiarsis. As you can see, I'm riding solo today. My usual co-host, Alex Mason, has a magical afternoon planned with his significant other, so he was unable to join me on the show today. We'll actually be back next week to break down the playoff picture and get his take on some of the things I'm going to discuss today. Obviously, this week, we're going to be previewing Week 9. It's a big week in the league given the current playoff picture. 5 teams tied at 3 and 5 for the last 2 playoff spots. Both division races very much up in the air. So a lot to break down for a big week in the league. We will start in the Eastern Division. Mace's Aces and Balso Hard U both tied at 5 and 3 atop the division, both with identical 3-1 division records. So I think these two teams are going to come down to the wire. Some other teams could fight their way back into it, but I think as of right now, it's looking like a 2-team race between these two. Mace's Aces is getting a crippling bye week this week. A lot of studs on its bench: Calvin Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, Colin Kaepernick, Anquan Bolden, all on bye this week. So it's going to be tough for it to pull out a win this week. But moving forward, its only other important key buys are for the Seahawks and Bills in Week 12. Russell Wilson, Golden Tate, and Fred Jackson. So the schedule certainly sets up well for it. Balso Hard U just made what I think was an interesting deal, sending Le'Veon Bell, Pierre Garçon, and Monty Ball to Ladarius Webb for Reggie Bush, Joique Bell, and Steven Jackson. Obviously, Reggie Bush, an explosive player, but Steven Jackson now becomes an every-week starter for it, and the schedule's tough, and Jackson did not impress last week in his first week back from injury. So I think that actually was another trade that Balls Hard U's made a couple after the Drew Brees trade that I think have not been good moves, and we'll see how that affects it moving forward. These two teams actually play each other Week 13 that I think might be the deciding game, and who wins that game will hoist its first division title. Both teams have never won a division title, and I think it's going to be Mace's Aces that pulls out that win and is able to get that all-important first-round bye and its first division title. Balso Hard U will still enter the playoffs as the number 4 seed and play in a quarterfinal matchup. The Western Division is definitely a 2-team race. Our top 2 teams record-wise overall, the Swords at 7-1, Ladarius Webb at 6-2. These 2 teams still have to meet in Week 12. Ladarius Webb won the first meeting earlier this season. The Swords, it's big buys moving forward. Jamal Charles next week, and then it's Cowboys, Jason Witten, and DeMarco Murray in Week 11. Marvin Jones and whoever starting at quarterback for the Eagles in Week 12. So some key buys for it moving forward. Ladarius Webb gets the brunt of it this week. Peyton Manning, Eric Decker sitting out on bye, and after that, no key buys for it. And the deal I just mentioned with Balso Hard U, I really liked. Its receivers have been struggling, and it went out and got a guy, Pierre Garçon, one of the most targeted receivers in the NFL. A deal I really liked for it, and I think that deal is going to put Ladarius Webb over the top, combined with the buys that the Swords is dealing with. That Ladarius Webb is going to win its second division title first since 2009, our first seasons of divisional realignment. The Swords will have to settle for the number 3 seed and play in one of those quarterfinal matchups. But the big confusion and the things to watch moving forward is the last 2 playoff spots. 5 teams now at 3 and 5, which wouldn't have been possible without RG3-Way's stunning loss last week. Went into Monday night needing around 4 points from Marshawn Lynch and a puzzling offensive game plan from the Seattle Seahawks. Marshawn Lynch only getting 8 carries, coming up with only 3.7 points for RG3-Way, losing by less than half a point to Samp Dees, which has muddled our playoff picture. 5 teams: RG3-Way, D. Butters, soon-to-be champ Samp Dees, and Kamoli, all 3 and 5, tied for the last 2 playoff spots. There are 5 games the rest of the way over our final 5 weeks that pit 2 of those 3 and 5 teams against each other. The first is this week, soon-to-be champ and Kamoli. Soon-to-be champ looking past this week has Josh Gordon on bye next week, Spiller and Dalton in Week 12. Kamoli gets hit hard by buys each week. This week he loses Victor Cruz, Michael Floyd, Julius Thomas, and then in Week 10 he loses his beloved Patriots Tom Brady, Stephen Ridley, and Rob Gronkowski. And then week 11, he loses Tony Romo. Kamoli's lineup is in shambles right now and hasn't even set its lineup. It's going to have to go to the wire to fill a wide receiver spot. So even with Andy Dalton's poor performance on Thursday night, I think soon-to-be champ pulls out the win this week and looks to be a team that competes into the final week of the season for one of those playoff spots. Given the buys that Kamoli has to deal with over the next 3 weeks, I'm selling it as a playoff team and actually think it's in danger of finishing in last place for the second straight season. Certainly Kamoli coming a long way from its championship game appearance in 2010. RG3A, the team I mentioned losing that heartbreaker last week, gets Mesa's Aces this week, who has dealing with all those buys. So I think it's going to get back on track and be able to pull out a win this week. Its only remaining buys are Marshawn Lynch and Deshaun Jackson in week 12. So the bye weeks certainly shape up well for it. D Butters, it has a couple of buys. Des Bryant in week 11, AJ Green in week 12. I actually originally didn't like its chances to win this week, but given the Thursday performance from Green and Lamar Miller and the recent trade that Also Hard You made, I think D Butters might be able to pull out a win this week, get to 4-5, and be very much alive for one of those playoff spots. Sam Dees, who that win over RG3-Way you had to call that a season-saving win, maybe one of its biggest wins in team history, because it's now right back in the thick of the playoff picture. Its remaining buys: Jordan Cameron week 10, Terrence Williams week 11, Stevie Johnson week 12. So it loses a guy a week, but it's a team that I think has some firepower that just has underperformed this season. If some of its players can get right, it could certainly make a run. But like I said, a ton of 3-5 games. 3-5 versus 3-5 games left this week. This week we have the soon-to-be champ versus Kamoli. Next week, week 11, D Butters and RG3-Way, Sam Dees and Kamoli. Week 12, RG3-Way and soon-to-be champ, and then week 13, D Butters and soon-to-be champ. So as you can see, soon-to-be champ controls its own destiny more than any other team. 3 games to go against the other 4 teams it's competing with for a playoff spot. I like soon-to-be champs' depth. The big problem for it all season has been its running backs. C.J. Spiller and Trent Richardson have not performed up to expectations. If they can somehow turn it around, that just might be the icing on the cake that can get it over the top. I actually think that soon-to-be champ, it's one of the teams that I'm buying as a playoff team, that it's going to be able to sneak in and at least win 2 of those 3-5 games. I think this week is definitely going to be a week that it's able to pull out a win over Kamoli. The other team I'm buying as a playoff team is RG3-Way. It's no secret that it's loaded. A minor setback last week with the crushing loss to Sam Dees, but I think that given its depth, its star power at the running back position, and its quarterbacks that have played surprisingly well, I think I'm buying RG3-Way as our other playoff team. How the seeding shakes out will still be something that we'll have to see over the next couple of weeks. But those are my 6 playoff teams. You got again, Mesa's Aces, I think, is going to be the Eastern Division title or champion. Ladarius' Webb going to win its 2nd Western Division title, and then we'll see some combination of Also Hard You, the Sorge, RG3-Way, and soon-to-be champ meeting in the playoffs. Obviously, the one wild card and the one team you never want to play this late in the season is 40s. It's 2-6, a game behind all those 3-5 teams, but I love the firepower that it still has. Its lineup is looking big to face the Swords this week, which I haven't mentioned. The Swords, crippling loss for it with Justin Blackman being suspended for the rest of the season. It was already weak at receiver. It made 2 trades this week where it gave up receivers, trading Kendall Wright to D Butters and DeAndre Hopkins to Also Hard You. So it'll be interesting to see how the Blackman fallout affects the Swords. I think that's going to be a loss that it might not be able to overcome. It's still a playoff team to me, but certainly not as dangerous. So 40s, it's made runs late in seasons before. It's done the unexpected, so we'll see if it can somehow get back into the playoff picture. But only 5 weeks to go. Playoff picture is tightening up. We might get a little clarity this week with some of the matchups, and like I said, Alex and I will be back next week to break it down. We'll get his thoughts on everything that's going down in the league. So please join us next week. Thanks for joining us here inside the Fantasy Hut. Thank you.